Let's go back to the year 2000 and say you were on the market for a Smart City Coupe, the car that went on to be the Smart Fortwo. This is the brochure you would have been faced with at the time in order to make your selection and choose the right model for you. Now don't worry, I'm not going to read this brochure from cover to cover. You can always pause the video if you want to read anything, but I'll be giving an outline of its contents and also demonstrating some of the wonderful pictures of these cars and also the technology behind them. So we start with some philosophy, and I think all these images here, they symbolise two people. So we've got a two-seater sofa, two lovers here, two halves of the brain, although this could overall just represent intelligence. 2.5 meters in length for the smart car. The fingerprint, I think, represents individuality, uniqueness, and the diamond for quality. Next we have city planning, and there's a whole bunch of information down here, really sort of stats really. So for instance, a car stands 90% of its time, and during the other 10% when it's used, a lot of people drive around with just their newspapers on the back seat. Don't think people even do that anymore, do they? Now it's all online. Much of the material on many cars cannot be reused. We regard this as scrap and have created a car which is up to 95%, which actually is 95% recyclable according to this. On average, there are 1.2 people sitting in a car going to work. And there are also some stats here regarding space in a city, and I think owning a Smart, it has such a small footprint, so you technically create more space for others by owning one of these. Next, more on the spaciousness of the car. You've got some dimensions down here, and this really does symbolise how little space a Smart takes up compared to other vehicles in a parking space. You could literally get two in there. Under the section here, climb in please, it says, the doors, which open out wide, invite you to climb in. First of all, you will be surprised at how spacious the car is inside, and you'll notice a few other things as well when you take the Smart out on the road. You have excellent vision, for example, because the seat is in a raised position. And it is, they do sit up quite high. I've always felt that. And I'm 6'1", quite a well-built chap, and I always fit into these quite well. There's also a good indicator here of the actual usable space within a car, the bit that's usually occupied by front seat occupants. And as you can see, on these overlays here, you have got space on the inside. It's just small on the outside. This page is really about a number of incentives that were around at the time if you bought a Smart. I don't know how well these have aged, if any of these are still available, but things like Smart Move Assistance probably are. But you've got a whole bunch of other things, deals with airlines, parking and things like that. There were some higher schemes, there's quite favourable rates for Smart customers with certain companies if you needed more than 2 seats. So it kept you on the move if you needed to go somewhere. Then got a whole page on recycling, and again this really does demonstrate their commitment to making sure that these cars can be recycled at end of life. There's also a section here on the powder coating of these cars, the Tridions, and it says here that world first, Smart is the first car manufacturer in the world to coat its steel bodies exclusively with top quality powder paints which are free of harmful substances. This does away with solvents, emissions, paint sludge and wastewater. Moreover, energy consumption is also considerably lower than in conventional painting processes. Okay, so this is the first of several of these in this brochure, and this is a feature on an actual owner. And this one here, this owner, this is a lady from the Netherlands. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, but I think that could be Jannek Wiegers. So she's an artist from Amsterdam, and she explains here what she bought and why. And she went for the Smart and Pure. That's the base model. So a whole section here on why she bought that, is she satisfied, and you'll see several other of these throughout this brochure. Next we have a section on the features on the outside of the vehicle. Door handles, ignition key, just the lighting and various other things. And it says here, the Tridion safety cell in black or silver, powder coated and thus free of any harmful substances, it combines cleanly with the polycarbonate of the body panels and is without doubt one of the most attractive ways of being protected on the road. I think the Tridion is such a major part of these cars. Obviously it is the frame that makes it major in itself, but it's such a unique thing, and there's going to be a lot about this Tridion throughout. And now we move on to the inside. There were some really funky colour schemes back in the day, these bright oranges and blues. I had one like this, in fact, way back. And it says here, you will find that everything in the Smart is designed to suit the natural movements of your body and positioned exactly where you would expect it to be. Clearly laid out displays, logically positioned switches and quality materials. And now we have somebody from Germany, Hermann Josef Freitz. Again, probably very badly pronounced, but he explains in detail here why he chose his model, and he went for the Smart and Pulse, which was the middle model, the sporty model. And here is a fantastic image of the Tridion, essentially laid bare. What a reassuring thing to have around you when you're driving. Talking of the Tridion, here is another view of it, along with the airbags. A whole section here on safety regulations. And it says here, the Smart safety concept starts with avoiding damage. You can count on your Smart having more safety features than other small cars. And it goes on to say here that the Tridion safety cell is the hard core of the Smart. And that the lateral and transverse struts of the Tridion activate the crumple zones of another car, essentially the other car you hit, and distribute the crash energy evenly over the safety cell. And you've got the front crash box, details here about that, and the rear crash box. And it's also reference to the fact that because the vehicle is set up a lot higher, if a car does make impact with you on the side, it's more likely to hit the sill area here, which is very strong, as opposed to up here. So here we've got a crash test vehicle, and this was a crash at 65 kilometers an hour. And it says here, once the front crash elements have been used, the wheels are integrated into the crash zone. They are supported on the lateral supports of the Tridion and deform in a controlled manner. The passenger cell remains rigid and the doors open easily. There's a section here on Trust Plus as well. This is the stability control program that these vehicles have, like an ABS. And it states here, just like other well-known larger limousines, the Smart comes as standard with Trust Plus, the electronic traction and stability control with its integrated drive slip control. The Smart's 32-bit computer uses ABS wheel speed sensors and a transverse acceleration sensor to analyse the driving status of the car permanently. This was ahead of its time, but I think due to its design, I think it was needed. It's quite a tall car. Section here on seating. A lot of people may not realise, but on the original Smart 450, these rear parts of the seats, backing, metal backing, were actually designed to protect you in an accident. It states here that they're called integral safety seats. It says they comprise a modular metal structure backed with sheet steel shells. Try saying that after a few. If the Smart is hit from behind, the rear crash box, the Tridion transverse and lateral supports and the engine, which is fitted in the back, absorb much of the crash energy. The rest of the crash energy is compensated by the seats with their tear-resistant covers. So they do protect you. Another reason not to put other seats in it, which people do sometimes. Okay, so there's a fold-out section in the middle here. This is a very comprehensive brochure. So we start with the Smart and Pure, This was the basic model with its steel wheels. We've got the Smart and Pulse. These early ones did still have steel wheels actually, the Pulse. And then we have the Smart and Passion with its alloys, and the Smart CDI, which was classed as a model of its own back then. Very agricultural, but apparently capable of really high mileages. And another case study. This person from Czechoslovakia, Dr. Alexandra Horsch, 29. Now she bought a Smart and Pulse model, and again she outlines the reasons why she made that decision. Nice shot of the engine there, that's the diesel. This next page gives more information about the CDI, which was still a 3-cylinder engine. You've got a power curve here, a little schematic of the injection system, and it says here, a mini masterpiece. The Smart and the engineers at Mercedes have truly turned the CDI technology into a mini masterpiece. The Smart CDI comes as standard with the world's smallest direct injection diesel engine. Made from aluminium, it only weighs 69 kilograms. It has a cubic capacity of 799 cc and has 3 cylinders. It also says here, when you have your first test drive with Smart CDI, we recommend that you have a hearing test. If you only hear a subdued buzzing sound instead of the normal knocking that you associate with diesel engines, this means that everything is working properly. As I said earlier, I think those diesels are quite agricultural. I don't see any reason to own a diesel Smart when the petrol ones are so much more refined and are very economical in their own right. But that's just me. You may own a diesel and you may love it. Kilowatts, we call it IQ. So this page is all about the engine and the ECU. So you've got various different pointers here to this engine. So you've got 33 kilowatts or 40, they were the 2 power options at the time. Electronic power management here, that's a strange translation, it's just the throttle body basically. Double ignition unit here, so a lot of people didn't realise at the time that each coil powered 2 spark plugs per cylinder. A lot of people didn't replace those lower, harder to access spark plugs, and as a result they'd be in there for thousands of miles until they broke up and caused all sorts of damage. Always really important to change all 6 spark plugs on these early 450 Smarts. You've got the 6-speed sequential transmission here. You've got the turbocharger right here, possibly one of the world's smallest little turbos. And it states here the cubic capacity was 599. Back in the day, that was the cubic capacity on the petrol engines. They later went on to be 700cc or 699, whatever they were. So here we have the 2 types of transmission. You got soft tip and soft touch. Now, all the Smarts of this era were just 2 pedals, but with the soft tip, you do have to still use the lever to select your gears, especially when changing up. If you forget when you're changing down and slowing down, it will change down automatically for you. But that's basically, you still have to change gear. The soft touch was fully automatic if you wanted it to be, but there's a button on the side of the gear lever that you can press if you wanted to turn it into soft tip. So you get the best of both worlds with this. This here is the engine ECU, the inside of the engine ECU, and it even states at board level what each component is responsible for, which is interesting to see. And another case study. This Sergio Gil Lopez, a 25-year-old from Spain, and he bought a Smart and Pulse in light white. And again, he outlines his reasons as to why he bought it, and he says what he thinks of it, which is all good. It probably wouldn't be in here if he thought it was a dreadful vehicle. And then we've just got the front body section there. I absolutely love this page. Now, when you look back to the year 2000 and think what else was around, nearly every car must have been silver back then. It really was that time. Around the millennium, silvers, those sort of icy blues, silvery blues were very common. And I think that this is one of the reasons why these were just so exciting at the time, because they were colourful, they were fun. I mean, look at these lovely colours. They're just so bold in a world where everything was so silver or grey. What can we say about this? The Smart and Pure, the early ones, the rear panel was in black. It wasn't colour-coded, the rear panel, in the way that it was for the Pulse and the Passion. You see? Yellow, yellow, black. So I don't know why they did that. It doesn't look as nice, but that's just how they were. So if you wanted to have the whole thing colour-coded, you needed to go for the Pulse model. So these are all the Pures down here. These are all the Pulses, these are the Passions, and the same on this page. Pures, Pulse and Passion. Gives you an idea of all the different colour choices. The early Tridions were actually anthracite. They were the very early cars. They had a metallic black Tridion on the black option, and the later ones, it was more of a sort of solid black. The anthracite Tridion ones are really rare. I've owned one of those. So the colours at the time, that was called Hello Yellow, Fat Red with a PH rather than an F, Jet Black, Light White. Now, there were some slightly more imaginative colours. This Aqua Vanilla, which is strange. I think that had kind of patterns in the paint, as did this Aqua Green. That's Bay Grey, and that's True Blue. This page is all about changing panels. Wow, the amount of these panels I've changed over the years and taken off and refitted. Yes, you could, as most of you will know if you own a Smart or you have an interest in them, you could change the colour of your car. You could never change the Tridion because that's the actual structure of the car. So whether that was in black or if it was in the silver, you were stuck with that. But you could change the body panel colours, and you could effectively refresh your car. If you decided you wanted it to be red, you could change it to red. Interestingly enough, in the UK, your Tridion, so whether it's black or silver, is the colour that's on the registration document. So you don't even have to notify the DVLA, because the car is registered as black or silver, and the colour of these panels is irrelevant. Which is a bit odd really, considering that the actual colours of these panels is the largest surface area. But hey, I guess the structure is the bit you can't change, so that's the bit that's recorded. And again, the interiors, at the time, I don't know anybody that really did this, because there were quite a lot of panels to remove, but you could change out the door trims and the top of the dash and your seats. And there were quite a few things you could change out if you wanted and swap your interior. But there is a series of interior colours right there. Standard equipment. If you want to pause this, you can have a look through at that. Just a couple of basics. The Smart and Pure was always with a black Tridion. You couldn't get that in silver. And as you'll see here, under exterior features, if you had the Pure, you had a solid roof, whereas the better models had a nice glass roof. To turn it into something of a greenhouse, but they had the glass roof. The glass roofs, I think, were better because they didn't discolour in the way that the solid roofs do, and the later polycarbonate roofs on the 451s, like I have on mine. Many of you, if you own a 451, will know that the roofs get destroyed by the UV from the sun and that they need to be refinished or wrapped. I made a video on that a short while ago. That's still ongoing really, as it's faded again. Freedom to choose. This is really about special features, things that optional extras, of which there were many. You could enhance the sound system. You could add fog lights, you could change your alloy wheels, leather steering wheel. You could opt for side airbags. There's a whole list of things here that you could opt for at the time. In terms of the audio as well, you've got a whole section here on the radios that you could have at the time, and storage for CDs, remember those? And look at that phone. Gosh, what was that, 5210 I think? I can't remember now. That's an old Nokia. They were solid, they lasted forever. Next we have accessories, so we've got things like child seats for those who have kids, mats. These bike racks always look quite good. More accessories, body panels, snow chains, wheel trims. The pure models used to just come with a tiny little black centre cap on the steel wheel, so you could actually make them look a little better by fitting these wheel trims. And a whole list of things you can have here. If you want to pause, you can read those. So as we get towards the end of the brochure, this is now about getting in contact and various other bits of information in terms of contacting Smart, and if you have an accident and inquiries and so on. Now this is a Smart tower. You used to see these all across mainland Europe, and I loved seeing these. They were so colourful. I used to just get very excitable when I used to see these, and it made me want one immediately. And I just knew I had to have one of these cars. And I think I'm on about my 7th now. Just amazing colours. I don't know how they got them in there. I assume this used to disappear into the ground or something, and you could like a lift, an elevator. But yeah, you'd see these everywhere. Really good marketing, really bold. It stood out, and I think there was so much hope for this brand at the time. It was an exciting brand. I wish I'd been involved with it, actually, because I'd love to have been involved at a business level with this brand. I think it was really wasted by the way it was marketed in the end, just being sold through Mercedes dealers that really didn't seem to be that interested in it as a brand. The amount of times I've gone into a Mercedes dealer and been greeted by someone, and when you mention what car you've got, they're just like, oh, it's a Smart. And there's definitely some sort of snobbery going on. Would have been nicer if they'd been sold separately from Mercedes. A whole bunch of stuff here. This is good. I'm impressed with this. Technical terms. So, for instance, crash box, pages 23, 27. With its crash energy absorbing elements, this protects the Tridion safety cell from sustaining damage which requires repairs in collisions up to 15 kilometers an hour. So, it's really good to have this, because a lot of people will read through and they'll be like, well, I don't know what a crash box is. And you can just look at this and it'll tell you. Now, I don't need to be told what any of these things are, but there'll be people out there that do. Like sandwich type construction here, which relates to the Tridion. All the modular aggregates are located under the passenger cell, which also causes the seating positions of the passenger to be raised. So, a whole bunch of things here that I think are really useful, and would have been very useful for people when they were looking to buy one of these. Technical specifications. There is a lot of information on this page about the various models and their power outputs and all the usual things. So again, if you want to pause that, you can. I will move my hands out the way and you get a clear image of that. And that is it. The last page, and that's a Smart and Passion there, I think, looking at the wheels, and a list of info centre contact numbers across Europe. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this brochure review for the Smart City Coupe from the year 2000-2001. I do have some other brochures. I've got an even earlier brochure. It's just a small brochure for, I think it was from about 1999. I'll do a short video on that soon, and I also have a brochure for the 2008 Smart Fortwo 451, much like the one that I own currently, and I will be bringing a brochure review on that too. I'll see you again in another video very soon. Meantime, please feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you and goodbye.